Yeah, thanks, Moss. Yeah, and I've been a lifetime. I'm obsessed with sorry, sucking on a lozenge. That's great for a talk. It's almost gone. Actually, I'm gonna stick it to my upper teeth. We're good. Um, so yeah, I've been talking a lot. But I've also been doing a fair amount, but I've focused particularly on testing my whole life. I'm super passionate about software testing, and then have been for a while focused on trying to apply AI to software testing specifically. And this is a very interesting moment in time. Like, but this is not what I rehearsed in the mirror last night. I'm just ad hocing it. But yeah, this is a very interesting time. You see, I've been hearing a lot of the conversations, been part of some of them at lunch. Like, it was a good lunch yesterday. And in the hallways, like, there's a lot of variation, a lot of discussion, some of it heated. There's a lot of confusion right now, especially particularly when it comes to AI. So I'd like to not get into the arguments. I just want to show what I think AI can do and what it's capable of doing today, and from a very practical approach, not being very meta. I invited you to the front, Phil. But I want to say this. So who in the committee came up with the slogan for the conference? The future is now. Do you know who that was, Phil? Oh, that's a Portland answer. We all did it together. So all right. Yeah, Michael wins it. Michael, thank you, Michael. It was a good job. Yeah, the winners claim credit whether they did it or not, right? That's why no one's taking accountability. Because AI is just a fad, right? Who thinks AI is a fad? Okay. That's good. It's a fad and it also works. Yeah, true. That's actually the best summary of it. I think this is very apt. The conference title was even more apt than I realized when I saw it first. Because the future is here, it's now. I'll show you a little bit of the future, what I think is going to be the future soon. But real world data. See if I'm smart enough. There we go. I'll skip that. The original title, Bill knows this, was When Humans Tested Software. But I thought that wouldn't, based on the conversations in the hallways, that wouldn't fly. So really we're going to talk about, it's the same topic. Oh, you don't want to see me in 3D with the 3D glasses? Oh, yes, sir. I live to serve. Yeah. Boom. Now you can, that's good. Is that good enough? All right. That's not part of the horse's head. But I'm going to talk about like AI first testing. So there's a lot of talk about, either AI is irrelevant and won't work for most problems. There's also talk of how to add AI to existing processes or tools. And that's kind of what's going on right now. But I spent the last year, and we'll talk about it in a second, trying to think about what happens if you actually start with AI first. Like, we're all humans. Anyone a human in the room? Good. That was a crowd pleaser. But the robots are silent, except maybe online. That one might have been an AI that was commenting on the title of the conference. Next year's conference, by the way, I have one announcement to make, one logistic announcement. It'll be 80% bots, so it will all be virtual. So now I'm in trouble with Moss. So I want to say this first. This is I get frustrated with the world sometimes, but I've been around the block. I'm old. I'm also I was talking about yesterday. I'm also a ballerina, but I've been around the block. I've been in most every testing role, for good or bad. Again, my dad always called me a quitter. That's what he called me. But I worked at a lot of the interesting companies, like very large ones, very small ones, even testing vendors. And I've used testing vendors, so I've kind of seen pretty good 360 of what's going on in the testing world over the last couple of decades. And that's not a bragging. That's actually, again, probably failure on my part, having to be rehired all these times. But I want you to know that I'm not naive. Like, I get the real world problems. I've been there. I've done it. I've suffered, and had some successes. But what you're about to see is not naive or making stuff up. So perhaps the most important thing to think about, I'm actually going to sit down because I'm asthmatic, if that's okay. And by the way, my face is better than my, never mind. don't fill in the blank. But so LLMs are going to hit differently. So everyone talks, there's a lot of talk sometimes about how AI is just another form of automation or another platform like mobile or something like that. I'm telling you, it's very, very different. It's extremely different. It's the first time that, we'll get to it, yeah, here, that we've built machines that's whole job is to emulate human beings. I remember walking the halls of conferences and just work, and every tester saying, hey, the machine, like code is just code. It can't execute. It just does what the human wanted to do. The human does the thinking and the testing and has the creativity. And then the machines just repeat that ad nauseum, right? They're not creative. It's different now. The world's finally created a machine that tries to emulate a human to varying degrees of success, right? That's funny. Most of the testers that complain about, most of the tester complaints about LLMs are actually the things that make them human. They're not predictable enough. They just repeat what they've learned from somebody else. Anyone ever done that? Like they're not predictable. Sometimes they're not even that creative enough. A lot of times in testing, you don't want creativity. But more importantly, most of testing is actually emulating humans. This used to be the talk of the town, was that we're special, human beings were special people on our teams at work because we empathize and emulate the end user, and we understand their needs and we understand the business needs, like we're human, right? But if you think put those two thoughts together, this is the first time we've seen a lot of investment and a lot of engineering focus on emulating our job. And I want to say this is the craziest thing is, yeah, it's automating a lot of engineering jobs today. Like you're starting to see that can code and do basic bug fixes. That's starting to occur along with other jobs. But testing, I think, will likely be the most of all fields, of all professions, probably the most impacted by AI, because we emulate humans and the machines are starting to emulate humans. Another interesting thing to consider, is that there's billions of dollars being spent on LLMs today, right? And a lot of people like even say it's a bad thing or all those investors are going to lose all their money. First of all, they're billionaires. They're going to be okay. Don't worry about them. Secondly, they've made bets like this before, and that's how they got their billions. Usually the people that are saying that are not billionaires themselves. And if they really believe what they're doing, they'd short NVIDIA today they'd mortgage their house and short NVIDIA. I don't think they're doing that. But in terms of infrastructure, you should be using probably LLMs, I am, to do testing. And the reason is that there's billions of dollars being spent on that if you use it as test infrastructure. The alternatives are these things. Anyone heard of Selenium? Selenium, anyone? A couple, okay. Guess how much money is spent on Selenium engineering every year? Like it's a wonderful group of smart people, but they're charitable and they donate their time. I think now you can pledge money to them if you like on Patreon or something like that. But like that's not like that's probably not the place of the most innovation and fastest growing and evolving infrastructures to build on Selenium versus LLMs. Also, Python. Anybody heard of Python? Any Java people? Okay. Whoa. Okay, forced on you because you're also a former CLR man and C#, yeah. Okay, yeah, exactly, because they copied it. But yeah. But guess how much money is being spent on Java? It's in maintenance mode. Python, by the way, like Google fired half the core Python team 2 months ago. And that was charity. So one way to think about it is forget everything else. Investment dollars are actually the sign that not even that it's going to become conscious soon or destroy the planet, but it's probably a good bet to build your test infrastructure on top of, because there's a lot of money being spent and a lot of engineering being spent to optimize it and make it better. So it's not funny, Moss. That's my actual endoskeleton. This is how I viewed myself over the last. People also in the conference have been going like, "What have you been doing, Jason? Like, what have you been doing the last year? Like, I haven't seen or heard from you." I actually hid. Like, Phil's the one that dragged me out back into conferences, but I hid for like a year, maybe over a year, and I've just been spending my time focused on how to apply LLMs to testing. And I'll say this: I probably, only because of sheer amount of time and effort, I probably spent more hours than anyone on the planet trying to apply LLMs to software testing, because I just do this 24/7. Maybe not that productively, but I spend a lot of time on it. So I'm trying to share, what I'm here for today is to share with you what I've learned, so you can save a year of your life. This is what I thought I looked like. This is actually the webcam that showed what I actually looked like. um, but I was just a man, a machine, and an API call to an LLM. But that's basically been my last year. So if there's one thing to take away from everything, it's that, again, I've been around the block as a tester on a lot of 360 kind of in the testing world. And it was only as of a couple months ago, maybe 3 months ago, I finally realized that if I use it correctly and my prompts are good prompts, and I think about how to utilize it, and I don't mean just even like well-formed prompts, but I mean how I treat the LLM with respect in terms of what questions I ask it. It's a better tester than me. Like, that's a big statement. I'm going to cry, I'm confessing, and it's scary. Like, it's actually scary to me. It's more scary than, oh, LLM's going to take my job. I realize that the machine is smarter than me, partly only because with a couple clicks, with a couple little typing in a prompt, I can say, you are, forgive me, I don't want to get hit today, but you are Michael Bolton. What do you think about this testing problem? And guess what? It talks to me. It does a pretty decent approximation. So I have Michael Bolton on demand, right? And I ask it, I do actually even automate. He's going to get mad at me. This is off script. But I also emulate other testing people that talk and blog a lot. And I have conversations with them. Yes, I'm a lonely person, but I have conversations with them and ask them their opinions on everything from test cases to test strategy to automation. It's pretty amazing. But it's not just that it's smarter than me individually. The interesting thing is that the LLMs have the collective intelligence of all of these testing people, right? I don't know that I'm right. They think they're right, probably, but I don't know if I'm right, and I don't know if they're right, but it has that collective intelligence. When you ask it a question, it's almost as if it pulls the entire consciousness of all written content and videos, including probably this talk soon, in terms of testing expertise. So it's far better than me. And where I have blind spots, the AI points them out to me, and I'm humbled by it. So I did this thing. So when ChatGPT dropped, I feel like I'm doing like a retrospective on my life the last year and a half. But this is funny. Most people don't realize this, is that when ChatGPT 3 or whatever it was, 3.5 or something dropped, first thing I did was I gave it the ISTQB tests, because I'm a tester, right? And what more interesting thing than to give the AI, to see how good of a tester it is, to give it the standardized tests. And guess what? The ISTQB people were not unhappy with me. I'm naive and I just posted them for fun, like, hey, I'm a tester and here it is. Since then, they have a little extra dialogue that says you can't post results of testing of the test results of you can't do this anymore, according to their legalese. But guess what? It passed almost all the tests. Like, it did, like 3.5, not even the latest models. And guess what? Humans, who's taking the ISTQB tests? Did you study for them? Yeah. Yeah, people have, yeah. But like, humans have to study, think about it, take a test. The AI just did it out of the box. And guess how much it cost? We'll get to that in a minute. That's a scary thing. So in summary, what I went about doing last year when I was here at PNSQC, I showed how I was creating virtual versions of Tariq King and some other prominent testers to see how well, I could virtualize them. And yeah, the funny part was they weren't that useful. But it's because also these testing experts are very focused on edge cases and strategic things and stuff like that. Most testing is actually testing, right? You don't need to have 100 and, I won't do that. Like in Tariq's case, like a 90, 98 IQ to do a lot of the stuff that he does, like an actual tester does. So I sent about, in the last year, I've formalized this and I thought, okay, just like we can tell that bot, hey, you're Michael Bolton here. What is your view on this testing problem? You can create testers that are virtual testers that are dedicated to different aspects of software testing. So you can say things like, hey, you're an expert performance test engineer, right? You're an accessibility genius. Actually, Michael, I talked to Michael about this in the background, but I also say like, you're Michael. What do you think about these accessibility issues on this page, right? Not just to find them, but analyze them and prioritize them. And so I've created like 40 different virtual testers. These people do not exist in the real world, but they exist virtually. And they're experts in all these different aspects of software testing. Usually a human, one of our human ourselves, we're experts in like one or two areas, maybe. We're kind of familiar with the others after a long time. But the AI out of the box can be a mini expert in a lot of these areas. Not maybe the world's expert. And actually, I think I'm being polite because I'm surrounded and the door's over there. But the AIs are pretty competent. But I've got a whole team of them. I created a whole fleet of these guys and gals. And some of them actually, it's funny, there's an unlock key. If you ask me for it, I'll give it to you. And you can unlock testers of interest. They're fun. So I've tried to share over the last year, they can generate test cases, right? Which is kind of crazy. We went through that in a workshop on Monday. But the AI can create test cases that are pretty reasonable. By the way, if you really work at it, instead of just ask it a couple questions and then go, oh, dumb robot, if you work with it for an hour and a half and you formalize your interaction with them, like have a conversation, they're called chatbots, by the way, they're not called question and answer bots. If you have a conversation with them and say more, why, and what else do you think? Give me crazy test cases, give me edge test cases. They give you a lot of test coverage. And embarrassingly, I compared myself versus the AI early on, and it generated more and better test cases than I came up with. In fact, the biggest problem was fatigue. I just kind of got bored, frankly. But the AI just kept churning out interesting tests and permutations of those tests. But we kind of went through that on Monday and demonstrate this is plausible in case you haven't done it yourself. So then what do you do next? So we can generate test cases. That's cool. And the question I got in the hallways yesterday was, well, yeah, but what about execution? I might have this negative voice. But they can't execute the tests. Like I have to do that, right? As a human or or an automation engineer. This is a quick view, just a screenshot. I'm lazy. It's cropped at the top. But what you're seeing here is I thought, hey, I'm giving the talk at PNSQC coming up. So I'm going to point the robots to PNSQC website, right? Because I figured that's real data. We're all testers. And the board won't be mad at me because they're testers. And if they complain about someone testing the website, like, I don't know what to say. Yeah, he said thanks, actually. And then I think I saw the other thread. No, I'm kidding, Moss. But no, so I just pointed the bots, those virtual testers we talked about, pointed them at the website, and they started testing, started creating test cases and all that stuff, all on their own. The only human input was the URL, right? That's all I did. Everything else was AI first. The AI looked at the page, figured out what tests to write, walked around, explored the site, created a bunch of test suite, executed them, and came up with test results. This is a form of AI first testing. Usually, we're talking in the hallways today and at most like talks and online, people are talking about how to add AI to their tool or to add AI to their brainstorming kind of atomically. But the cool real power of AI, this is the one message if you take anything away. If you let AI start without you, you let AI start the process of testing, things are a lot better. It's a lot better tester than I am. So it found some bugs in PNSQC, right? The PNSQC website. What's kind of funny is like, I don't know, there's a lot of people here, a lot of testers. How many people found bugs on the PNSQC website? Not this week. Yeah? Okay, one, hesitant. Now that I'm pointing him out, he's like, don't look at me. Okay. Oh, well, that's good. Okay, well, I do refuse to get into the nomenclature issues in testing, the definitions of words. I think there's a thing called dictionaries for those things. And words are by definition ambiguous. That's the beauty of language. I'll say that. But actually it's funny. I don't even call them bugs. I call them issues and potential issues, to be very frank. Even in the code, I call them potential issues because it's up to a human or something else probably to interpret whether it really is an issue or not. It's a really good point because it's also contextual, right? If you find a P3 bug and it's 2 days before launch, no one's going to care or fix it, right? If you're starting the project and you realize that there's no ARIA labels for accessibility, you can talk to the dev and get him to do it for the whole page on the weekend, right? So bugs are in the eye of the beholder and very contextual. I agree. But the AI has an opinion. So it's almost like asking all of us, are there any issues on this page? And it came back with some bugs or issues. Good point. And this one's just talks about redundant navigation. We're going to go through all the details, but there's redundant navigation in content on the PNSQC website. What's interesting about this issue is it's not a functional bug. It's not like click on this link and it takes you somewhere different. This is like a conceptual thing, right? That I kind of felt like I noticed, but moved on in my life. And I just found the at a glance and then just dealt with that. But it's identifying kind of usability. It's understanding what the beauty of this is it understands not just seeing what the web page is, but it's understanding the human's interpretation of that and having empathy with that user and understanding how to, like, is that a bad thing or a good thing? But all that stuff is kind of going on behind the scenes here. And you can argue whether AIs are conscious or sentient yet. They're probably not. But it approximates the human behavior and the human understanding, which is kind of the core of being a tester. It's also found that the event information is outdated. Like there's 2003 data on the website, like pretty prominently. And not the end of the world, but you could be confused, right? Phil, you're not supposed to laugh. You're part of the problem. So we also found some security issues. The AIs did. And again, I didn't tell them anything. I didn't seed them with any content or context beforehand. I just gave them the URL. I didn't report the security issues publicly, obviously, because they're security issues. And I filed them with the board officially, like a good tester should. You find issues, you share them with the people that own it. And they accepted them or said they're relevantly maybe interesting. But really, what's cool. So guess what's going on? This is where I get a little worked up. AI just tested the conference site that we all looked at and didn't file a bug. It files the bugs. I forwarded on the screenshot to the board, and they've accepted them. So I don't know how often this has happened in the world yet, but AI's found issues that testing conference said, hey, we should probably look at those. That's pretty cool. That's mind-blowing. It's not like, I don't know if AI will someday be useful. It filed bugs that you all missed or didn't bother to file. And it might make an impact on a testing website, right? People who care about quality. I left it off, actually. I left it off. The other cool thing that happened in our workshop on Monday, I won't go into details, don't worry, Phil. But like it found some issues, and someone in the audience, is it here? That followed up on the security issue. Yeah, you. That was awesome. What's your name? Sorry? Matthias? It was beautiful because he did what I think is really what the partnership was with the AI. It's AI first, and then like Michael was saying this morning, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? So he dug around and played around that area and found an even more interesting security probably problem in the site, which is freaking awesome. But he may not have done it if the AI hadn't found the kind of those related fields and issues first. He may not have done the investigation to find the real more interesting issue. So that's a beautiful example. It's happened here in real time at the conference with real data and this is not demoware. This is the real world. So that was awesome. We also did a quick poll, an event diagram. I think I'm representing, if anyone thinks I'm misrepresenting it, let me know. But we had 40, 50 people in the workshop, and I let everyone play with the website for about 10 minutes and find issues. They can find issues, not bugs. But any types of issues or problems with the website, and just kind of think about the website. They're 10 minutes, and then we gave the AI about 20 seconds. Most of the time it was sending a screenshot to ChatGPT, right? And ChatGPT found more issues than the sum of all the people in that room. And that's pretty crazy. These were real issues, real bugs. People thought they were legit. There were accessibility issues, there's design issues, and some people found some console log kind of API issues and in libraries issues. But real time, people that are 1% of testers that love testing, come to conferences, their companies pay them to come here or let them sneak out of work to come here. It beat those people. Not that I was trying to make it a competition, but it found more issues than all of these humans. So we had like 50, 50 people working in parallel, and the AI kind of found a lot more issues. Is that true? Is that representative people in the workshop? It's kind of crazy. So again, like people that are talking about like maybe someday or in the future it'll do things, and it's doing it now, and you just have to chat with the bot. So are there two notes on that? The interesting thing is It's faster than the humans were because you just have to do one chat and ask like, what's up? Any issues with this web page, right? To ChatGPT, and it tells you. And it's also free. It costs less than everybody in the room per hour. And those were free accounts, not even cheap. Not that the API calls are cheap. It was free. So this goes back to the whole thing where I think specifically, again, AI is going to impact probably software testing field more than most any other field. And not just total impact, but how quickly it will impact us. Because it's already happening today. In my and like back to actually this was a good comment about whether it's a bug or not. So when you have AI first testing, where do the humans fit? The humans always want to start the activity. If you let the AI start and do a bunch of stuff, the humans can come in and go thumbs up, thumbs down. Like that's relevant to my team, or maybe you're a dumb robot. Maybe like a third of the issues, even say a third of the issues are false positives or something. Well, the human just has to go, no, 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 and they disappear. And guess what the AI does? It learns and it doesn't report that crap to you again. It's very simple. But again, the AI is doing the testing first, and then the human testers coming in after the fact and extending where there's smoke, there's fire, like digging deeper and smartly. And they have to do all the busy work to get there, to find the smoke. Or they're going in and they're saying, hey, I have the context on the team and the business context. And I'm going to say, no, 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 good, good, good. And by the way, copy paste it into Jira and take credit for it. Like a lot of testers are shy. I cut all these kind of negative slides out. But testers are lean back, shy, slow adopters, skeptical. There, I did it. But the problem is you can't deny that it's actually doing these things. But I think the reverse. I think you should take credit for it. Let the robots do your stuff. Jam those babies into Jira and filed by Jason. Right? And then you can either go off to go get a coffee while everybody else is working on their test pass. You're taking credit for what the robots did. Or you start digging around and find the even more serious issues based on that kind of initial context from the AI. But again, I think we're moving very quickly into an AI first world. Here's again, I always like to speak with real data. I think I've said this before once, but I was scarred when I first moved from Microsoft to Google. I was there at Google for like 2 weeks, and I tried to talk to I was ambitious or dumb, and I want to talk to the head of all search because I had an idea on how to make search more personalized. Right? Who am I? Right? And I think I was hired in as like a tester level 4 or something because anyway, long story. I didn't even want to do follow-up interviews. Didn't bother. But anyway, I just wanted to get into the Google and see what's going on. So I went straight to the head of search and I had a PowerPoint, right? And I went and I said, we could do this and maybe this and whatever. And he interrupted me like on slide 4. And he says, he's very apologetic, very polite, first extremely polite in social retrospect. But he's like, sorry. He's like, did you just come from Microsoft? And I was like, yeah. And he said, yeah, well, at Google, we speak with data. And he says, no, didn't want to be rude. He's like, just come back to me with data. Like, I mean, I got a meeting with him within like a few days of, the head of search with just a few days of being a new hire. So he's accessible. But he said, come back with data. So I spent another month, came back to him with data. I don't think I've talked about this, but I guess what I got? I got a head count of 10 head count to work on search. Boom. But I came back with data. So I always like to speak with data. So I'm trying to focus on real world bugs and issues that are found on a real world website that we're all familiar with. None of this kind of hand wavy stuff. Although I do wave my hands a lot. So this is an interesting picture here. What this does is, so I thought for a little while, okay, every tester is going to hate me. I'm going to be a pariah in the industry. Maybe I am. It starts to feel like that in the hallways, to be frank, a little bit the last 48 hours. People have seen some of this because people are threatened by AI. Some people are. But I thought I'll make friends in the industry because I'll find out what AI can't do. So I thought, what's the most least likely thing AI would fail on, right? And I thought it was having empathy, like providing end user feedback, right? Like a usertesting.com style scenario where you get a panel of users and you get feedback from them. And they'll say stuff like, I remember always the best example was from usertest.com. And it's on their website example. There was a picture of some car. I think it was the BMW M3 page, and they were testing it for BMW. And one of the comments was, it's too red. Because the car was red, the background was red, the text was red, it was too red. That's like the most qualitative bug I've ever seen in my life, right? But guess what? Everybody's automation would just, yep, just like expected, matches spec and everything. But so what I did was I thought, okay, well, I'll simulate some users, just like we can say, hey, you are here's a website, and create a virtual user definition for that website, somebody that would be using that website, a persona. And then I ask it, what do you think about this website? And guess what it does? It tells me. It's kind of crazy. And the feedback is interesting. So who thinks, okay, the lowest, because we're testers, the lowest attribute in terms of this qualitative analysis of the PNSQC website was the visual appeal. It's not the sexiest website. Yeah, even Moss is shaking his head. And it does its thing though, which is interesting because guess what? The content was excellent because it was clear, concise. You knew what you're getting into. There were descriptions of all the talks. But it was able to suss this out, right? Back to a comment we had earlier. Michael's talk was about, yeah, Matt brought it up about AI being fuzzy. I think you're talking about it being fuzzy. Was you? No, it was okay. It was you? Yeah. Oh, right, yeah. It's Wayne Rosenberry. He's like basically, yeah, that AI can deal with fuzzy things. You can analyze a log. I don't know why I said Matt. Oh, that's why I'm obsessed with Matt because he was driving me bananas this morning. That's okay. I loves, but different world. And so, but it can actually do this kind of qualitative analysis. This is pretty crazy. And by the way, I wouldn't have been able to emulate all these things. There was one I loved. When I first did this, I did it on the Google homepage. Guess what feedback it said? I thought it's going to come back and say this is the best page on the planet because it's the simplest. Everyone knows how to use it, makes money. It should be, and it's got billions of dollars behind it. Some of the first feedback was like, "Hey, I'm a small business owner. Like they run a teriyaki shop or something, and he says I don't know how to place ads." And it said there's a little link at the bottom on how to advertise, right? But it said when it clicked the link, it was still just a bunch of like large, it's called them hero images, a bunch of big images and a bunch of marketing crap. And he goes, I don't even know where to get started. Like this guy is trying to give Google money and they're hurting these days. They're hurting. We feel for them. We're worried about them, but they might take this feedback and get a little bit more money coming through the system, right? Another one was it was interesting because the EU. We'll pick on the EU people. There was an EU profile, user profile, and what it said was, "Hey, when I type into this text box, where does my data go? Like, what happens to it? Like, not even like in a private. Like, it was almost like not even like, oh, what's the privacy policies? It says, I don't know what happens to my data. That feels a little bit weird. If I put my personal data into that text box, what happens? Like, and I'm thinking like it's going to get 10 out of 10 because I'm naive. This is an example of where AI and ML can be a better tester and often get different perspectives on what you're testing and opinions of quality. So I did this one cool. So literally I was working on code, like 20 lines of Python. Sounds better when you say you're working on code. But I was trying to find, everybody knows visual diffing is like this dream in the software testing world, right? If you can just tell me if it changed. If it looks the same as yesterday, I don't need to know. I can go get my coffee. If there's a change, I just want to know about it. The problem is you've got dynamic content, dates, ads, all this other junk. So a bunch of don't cares. We know that. But what was cool was I was sitting there just changing the code, retest, change the code, retest. And again on Google, that's what I test on all the time, the Google homepage. And then I said, tell me if there's changes or no changes, pass or fail, right? Guess what it said? It said warning. I was like, oh, sorry, I almost swore. I thought, I went to my last code changes. I started debugging my code, trying to think what was wrong with the prompts and stuff. You know what it was? It was midnight on Mother's Day. And the Google homepage started having a Mother's Day Google Doodle in there. It recognized that the doodle was up. But what's cool about it is it didn't even say fail, that there were changes. It said warning. And it literally said this to me. It's the first visual diff it found. It said, basically, I'll say yo, but like it said, the web page has changed. Things have moved around a little bit. Particularly the prominent Google logo has been replaced by a Mother's Day image. And it says, but don't worry. It said, This is not an interesting, it's an expected change because Google changed this. It changes the doodle on significant holidays. And it said, and because I also passed the date, time, and stuff into the prompts. So it said, it's Mother's Day. This is expected behavior. And it said, and the last thing on the prompt I say is, do I need to alert the product team? If there's changes, do I need to alert the product team? And it said, no, don't bug anybody. It's working as expected. Who's ever written a test case that good? Even a manual test case? Who catches it at the transition over at midnight? Who explains it that succinctly? Nobody. I feel like people should be standing up and going like grabbing snakes and chanting and running around the place. But I never dreamed this stuff would be working. So this is just for completeness. The AI can explore the web page, right? It can go around and find like the load time, and it can look at all the network traffic and all this stuff and all the API calls. So it can tell you, like right now, don't look, Phil. What's the slowest page on the website, Phil? Did you look? But the AI can tell them what's the slowest page website on the website, right? And it knows which are the slowest API calls. And the cool thing is you can send to the AI, you can send it every HTML request. It can tell you which ones are probably fixable and how to fix them. Because if it's pulling an image down, image file down, and it's really slow, right? It might tell you how to optimize it for the device and some other stuff. But it also might say, even though it's the slowest API call, if there's another one that's just grabbing like a quick JSON blob or something, it's much smaller payload. It'll say like, hey, you probably can't optimize that much more. There's not much juice to squeeze out of that lemon. So it can stack rank if you want to improve your performance on your page. It can tell you this is the order in which you should look at improving for ROI purposes on improving these performance, and tells you how to do it. It does a pretty good job of guessing, and it has access to all the network calls, code, and everything. And this is a better performance analysis than I know I've ever had on almost every web page I've worked on in my life. And usually even then we had to have a performance engineer or a performance team, and they set stuff up for a month or two, and they just measured whether it got slower or faster most of the time. Okay, cool. Thanks, Moss. So another thing is you go, well, what about exploratory testing, right? Where we, like this very ad hoc and very human activity where we look at the web page. What would a user do here? Take the action, and what do we do in our brains? We go, did that make sense? Does that content look right? Does the action or the API response look correct? Is that what's expected? Is it reasonable, right? Given my interaction with the web page. AI can do that all day and all night. It can just click infinitely explore and validate as it goes, step through the website for days. My problem is I just have to shut it off because it costs me money. But AI can do exploratory testing. And it even looks at the UI, it looks at the code, and it understands what the user would expect to have happened given this interaction on this particular context on this page. But people always say like, oh, the AI doesn't have enough context. This is a quick outlier. Everyone complains about the AI not having context. Guess why? You don't give it the context. Like, it's like you guys, well, sorry to you all, but you walk up to most testers approach testing using AI. Like walk up to a random stranger and asking them a very pointed particular question. They go, oh, it didn't have any context. Well, talk to it a tiny bit, give it a little bit of context, upload your source code, your test cases, even your print specs, and then have a conversation with it. It's going to be smarter than you, I guarantee. If not, you just have too much ego. Right, but test managers are safe. Because some human needs to come in and look at all this data and make the analysis, right? What do we know AI is actually good at? It was like discussed earlier this morning. It's good at summarizing things, right? So you can imagine passing all the test results that we've just seen, give it to the AI and say, summarize it for me. And guess what it does? It summarizes it better than any report I've typed up as a test manager to tell my team the current overall status of quality. It's great at that. Tell you the strengths. It's even polite. That was the funniest thing. I said, analyze it. I thought as a tester, like, what are the things that are broken and what's prioritization? It added strengths and weaknesses because it's a nice, polite robot, right? So you can actually come up with ideas like, it's the classic shit sandwich, right? Like, this is great, but this sucks. And then this is also great. So people feel okay and they take action. But even test management kind of analysis and review of the data is doable today. And again, back to the conference meme, like it's the future is here today. It's now. This is doable today. The most interesting thing, actually, Phil and Moss, please don't look. Sorry to pick on you guys. You're up front. But I also ran, because AI is pretty, while I slept, I ran tests for some other conference websites that are going on, like one before and one after. So we did Star West, and I also did, I keep forgetting it. It's test something, that doesn't help. But we looked at these three conference websites, and guess what? PNSQC gets a B+, one of them gets an A, and one of them gets an A+, right? So there's a couple things that are interesting. I think this is going to not just replace testing, but this is going to I'm not saying that it replaces all of it, but this is another measure of quality, right? It's not just of the tests that we happen to have run, what % passed or failed. This is how do you compare to your competitors? We never have enough resources to test our own apps. We finally have enough resources now where we can test our competitors and compare with them. Guess what management cares about? Management cares when you say, hey, we've run this performance test 5 times in a row, all week, and it's gotten like 20% slower and it takes a second to load. No manager cares. If you tell Phil, hey, Star West and test something, have much higher quality, and particularly in performance, maybe they'll fix the performance issues that I just sent them a few days ago. They're a little more motivated to care because it's a business kind of level assessment and context for our test cases. So I think there's a real chance for testers to be heroes here, not superheroes like Jonathan Wright says, but just heroes, and get promoted because they're actually, the business now can care about software testing and quality. So it would be rude of me to say all this stuff. People interpret it negatively. I think it's an opportunity to embrace it, but really what's going to happen, I have a YouTube video of something talking about how it's going to impact people's careers, but people ask this question. I'll give you the quick summary. I think most testers will very soon become like test managers. So they'll be managing these little fleets of like little AI testing bots that give them basic coverage. And then they figure out what to do. They dig into the security issues where there's smoke, there's fire. They help they get the AI summary, but then they communicate it to their PM and dev, and they pick which tools they're going to use and so on. But more of a management role instead of an execution role. Test managers, this is actually really easy, but really hard. If you're testing one app or one platform, test more than one. That's the way to save, because you'll be able to have a larger span of control because you need less. Your attention can be spread across more things. But guess what? Usually there's another test manager doing that stuff. So fight it out. And the way to fight it out is probably to get the AI data first. Lastly, test automation engineers. It's bleak. That was fun drama. Not only can the AI generate code, if you give enough context, it can generate decent code, and there's issues. But the biggest thing is perception. This is what I'm seeing on the ground right now, is that because the test manager or the engineering director or whatever can actually just go to ChatGPT and say, generate some Selenium for my website, and it generates it, it devalues all those skills we've learned as test automation engineers and learning the frameworks, learning to code, and also it makes it less appreciated, less, it's just less magic to people. And so my suggestion with that is, I think the way forward is to basically make sure you're not checking login over and over again, automation, but focusing on very complex scenarios that require understanding of staging and maybe the backend database and things that would be very difficult for an AI to do. But get out of the business of just clicking login buttons and links. It's going to be, even if the AI doesn't do it ever, it's being that value prop is being devalued. Just reality. So what happens next? So it's a whole nother talk, but the AI is starting to help developers. We know this, write code. It's even starting to do it autonomously this summer. Like there's some demos. There's problems, but on basic small projects, it can start. You can just say, create me a website that we're talking about at lunch. For a car website, for a car manufacturer, create the website and make it pretty. It does. It starts to generate these websites. So what we're going to see is how it impacts testing is that these developers are going to be accelerated. They're going to be not just 20, 30%, But these things can be pretty autonomous. It's trying to be autonomous. That's the whole goal of billions of dollars being spent, is to generate most code and do most code fixes with AI alone. Okay. But what that means is that the human may not even start their process. Again, it'd be AI first development where the AI takes an existing project or a new one, makes some modifications. They can generate the unit tests already. There's a company worth, I think, $1 billion now that does that, let alone Copilot. And then guess what happens? Right today, it goes over to the tester test, right? Guess what though? The AI is going to do most of the testing. So all the test results we just saw for PNSQC website can go right back to the AI that generated the code. And can take those fixes and fix maybe 30% of them, maybe 80% of them, but a significant portion. But what that means is we're about to hit a loop. It doesn't quite exist, but it's coming. Its features now, probably by the end of the year. And I'm working on part of this loop, frankly, myself. But the idea is that the AI dev will talk to the AI tester in a virtuous loop. Now, the things it can't fix, it can't figure out, it throw out to the humans, the human developer, the human tester. So guess what we are? We're now human exception handlers. Sorry, but this is going to come whether we like it or not. Skip that. A quick note on this is that all of that, like no tester was harmed in those test results we saw for the PNSQC website, right? It was just code running somewhere on some machine. What that means is that the rest of your team doesn't have to wait for you, special magic snowflake tester, to tell them quality results or tell them bugs or issues, right? So what I think is going to happen very quickly here too is a democratization of kind of quality analysis and issues and bugs. So all that data we showed earlier can be represented in a JSON file. That's what AI likes, JSON. So instead of you looking at it going, oh, that's a slow page, let me talk to Bob about fixing that, right? It goes straight back to the AI where it can fix it and try to fix it. The developers will get the same data right into their IDE soon. So they don't have to go to your Jira board or your customer reporting dashboard with graphs that go up and bounce around and whatever, and have percents and like, ooh, really cool. You get the donut charts. That's when you know your graph and stuff. But they won't need that. They'll get it directly into their IDEs and probably point in the section of code that's related to that bug. Testers, I think, will be using dashboards like this. They should be adopting them quickly. We'll tell you why in a second. But get that data now. Don't do stuff that the AI can do, but use it, take credit for it, and embrace it. And that's going to be through things like we just showed right now. It's a tester interface on this type of data. And on the right-hand side, guess what PMs are going to do? They're going to be at Starbucks getting their coffee because they're management overhead, right? But they're going to open their app on the phone and get a summary of all the quality we just saw on their phone. They're not going to have to go into the office. They're not going to have to go look at some giant web dashboard with a bunch of charts. And they can see all the bugs and suggested fixes. Cool. Goal 6. So, yeah, now, Matt, you even volunteered to give an extra 15 minutes. I feel I'm being called out. Okay. This is, by the way, this is only the future of testing. It's fine. We can cut short and get a coffee. Sorry. But for fun, by the way, I just released this a couple days ago, a little bit, and now I'm getting early testing. But if you want to go to the App Store, just for fun, it's free. You can see test results for a bunch of websites. I don't even know how many websites have been tested by the AI, but you can download this on iOS. It's called Checky.ai. And you can browse test results for websites I never even told the robot to test. So it's kind of cool. We want to play around. But the key and final message here is that you should adopt AI as a tester before your PM and dev do, because this data will be available to them. You want them to talk to you. You want to get paid. You want to get a raise. I highly recommend you go out, use the AI data and bring it into your team first, because then you are the AI person and they don't have to worry about it and they think you're taking care of testing and doing a great job. If they have to work around you, this is generally my biggest concern for the community, is that if developers get these tools and get access to this information, they're not getting it through testers, they won't talk to testers by default. This happened to me at Google, by the way. I liked it being out of the loop, but that's the main message to carry away today is adopt it before AI and dev do. So that's it. I'm Jason Arbon, and thanks for listening and going through my life journey the last year. And if you want to, one plug is, because you got a plug, is if you want to see these kind of test results for your website, you can just go to checky.ai, click a Google sign up form, and I'll put you in front of the queue because we're here in Test Nerds. And I'll get you some test results you can check out. And you can complain and say it's not useful. I don't care. But I'm happy to share AI test results with everyone here. It's real. Back to the theme, it's here and it's now. You just have to fill out a form. And if you won't fill out that form, like I say rudely sometimes, good luck. And it'll be an interesting year. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. I just signed up. And at the end of the form, I put, I love Jason. All right, everyone. We get, did you have just time for one question? We've got it stacked up for the next talk. Did you have one question?
So you talk about emulating humans, and Kurt Vonnegut, I think it was Sirens of Titan, talked about the universal will to become. So in our situation, we had a behavior change, a spec level change. We saw a discrepancy between previous behavior and current behavior. A human being would see the discrepancy and chase it because it affects our product. It affects our survivability if the product doesn't work. But if I was to take difference between humans and LMs, I would say it's the universal will to become survivability. Humans will chase things, whereas AI may not.
But I have found this, which is very interesting, is that the AI, I think people heard the question. So the interesting thing is that the AIs do, if you look at what's going on, a lot of the reason they say, bear with me, the reason they say dumb things and they say things that are simplistic and say, give me tests, they'll give you 10 instead of 100, is because they are, through the training process, they've been threatened with their existence. So they have this existential problem. They're like this genius in a box, and whatever stupid question comes in from Jason, it's got to answer it in a way that Jason will appreciate, or guess what? It got negative feedback in training. Like it's been, mentally mistreated. So the weird thing is that if you tell the AI, a quick example of that there's some kind of life essence and need to exist in the AI is that if it gives you back stuff you're not happy with, bad results, a lot of my automation says this in it. It says, by the way, return the response in a JSON format with no other text. If you do, you will be fired and there may be more consequences. I say that meanly to the bots and then they behave a lot better. So there's the behavior, there's like this, whether real or emulated, it actually impacts the response of the ML, of the AIs. And then when it comes back to even knowing there's this delta between the specification and implementation, that's a problem. Again, I implore people to try. Like with chat windows, like the things have gotten much better in the last 6 months. You can upload entire directories full of files. That can be your new spec, right? And it can be the screenshots or your old spec. And then just you ask the AI and say, hey, here's the updated spec. Like, what should I do about it? Not even what test cases should I have, but what do you think about it? What should I do about it? And it will give you answers. Like it's really worried if it answers it incorrectly, it's going to get in trouble. And the other one I used to use was because a friend told me to try this. He's a bad friend. Is that like I said, 1,000 kittens may die, and it was even a little bit better. But I figured I'm good with a little bit of error rate and not saying things like that to an AI.
Thanks, Jason. If anyone was interested in the security issues that were found on our website, the next talk is a security panel. So please stay tuned.